low as well. I like that. Smoke will force Fur to be unincluded. He jumps up on the hay bales and hits the spray a little wildly. That's the hard part done. 3 bullets is all he needs.
Whew. Okay, Nico, we see you. If you want to know more tricks like that, this video is a great start.
ProGuides fam! What's up guys, my name is Stray, and I'm here to bring you guys 10 lesser known tips that will further increase your understanding of the game. So with that said, let's get right into it.
The first tip is a basic one, but one that a lot of people aren't aware of nonetheless, and that's that you run just as fast with the bomb as you would with a knife. In my own games, it's not very uncommon to see people trying to go for a last second fake, and then they'll show some presence on one side of the map and then rush to the other in order to catch the CTs off guard by really running down the clock and faking nonetheless. It's a great strategy, but seeing people failing it miserably because they both overestimated their time, and especially because they seem to think that they run faster with the knife out, making them only switch to their bomb at the very last second and wasting their last bit of time. Because of that, it is really painful to see. It doesn't have to be that way though. You could pull out your bomb at any moment instead of the knife, and for your speed, it simply does not matter. If you're one of those players that have lost around because you are fumbling around switching between your knife and bomb, I'd advise you get used to running with your bomb out even when you aren't near the bomb site and are instead just rotating. That way, you'll learn that it does not matter for speed. Sure, your knife might look really cool as well, but at the end of the day, winning is more important, right? Before we move on to our next tip, it's of course time for our question of the day. Today's question being, what do you wish you were told when you first got started playing the game? For me personally, I was right out of the gate already super obsessed over improving, and I was thus watching a lot of videos on how to play Counter-Strike. The one thing I was never told though, or at least it's not something I fully realized until later, is how important decision making is, especially when compared to raw mechanics. More about that later. But what about you guys? What did you wish you were told when you were just starting out playing the game? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Something else I really wish somebody would have told me sooner is that utility is so much more valuable the later it is into the round, and that's especially true for smokes and molotovs. Whenever I was first learning about utility, I was told about how bad it is to die with utility, and that you should try to avoid it at all costs. So naturally, I made sure it wouldn't happen. And although not dying with utility is decent advice, especially in certain situations, it's definitely not something you should live by. For example, if you're planning to rush B and you're going in first, you don't really need any utility. Sure, maybe you might want a single smoke in case there's a Molotov that you need to smoke, and that's probably better done by the guy behind. But even still, you won't need to buy a full set of utility. You probably won't need those 2 flashes, and probably not that Molotov, and you definitely don't need that HE grenade. So it's best not to buy them and save that extra money. But what you shouldn't be doing, which is something I used to when I first heard that advice, is spamming your grenades early in the round so I don't have to worry about dying with them. For example, if I were to play A on Mirage, I'd molly ramp at the start of the round and I'd smoke once it fade. So in the first 30 seconds of the round, I would have already used my 2 main grenades that I could have used for stalling, which isn't exactly great, is it? Stalling your opponents for about 18 seconds like a smoke grenade can do is obviously much more valuable when there's 30 seconds on the clock than when there's still over 100. So don't worry about not dying with your utility. Sure, using that nade is better than letting it drop on the ground, but taking the risk to hold onto your nades and trying to save them for later into the round is a much better and more effective strategy. Another thing that is very commonly believed, although not always true, is that you shouldn't buy a helmet when you're up against AKs. Sure, there are going to be situations where it's better to not buy a helmet, but that's definitely not all the time. So when should you buy a helmet and why? Well, you should first off always buy a helmet when you have great economy and plenty of money. If there's no reason to save that extra 350, you shouldn't. And I know what you're thinking, but the AK headshots you in a single shot anyway, so why should I buy it? Well, first of all, if your opponent headshots you through something, for example a wall or the side of a box, which is not at all unlikely to happen because you should be trying to play around cover, then it can be the difference between life and death. Additionally, if your opponent runs out of a clip and switches to his pistol, it's also obviously going to make a really big difference. But something else that I rarely ever see mentioned is that even though your opponents might have an AK that round, that doesn't mean that they will for the next round. Let's say you're up against AKs and you know that, so you decide to save that extra 350 and not buy a helmet. You win the round and survive, but you do take a bit of damage and now you're just up against pistols. Well, that means you now need a helmet, right? But instead of buying it for 350, you have to buy it for 1,000 since you were too greedy in the previous round. Even though saving that extra 350 can be a great idea in a lot of situations, it's not true that you should be doing it all the time. Oftentimes, it's better to spend that extra 350 on the chance that it might save your life or your cash later. Next up on the list is that aim is overrated. When I was in the low ranks, I was always obsessed with trying to improve my aim and mechanics, but looking back at it, that was a mistake. Having great aim is a goal for a lot of young CSGO players. They think that when they improve their aim, they'll instantly become a better player too. That's not the case though. From what I've seen from watching gameplay of lots of lower ranked players that feel stuck in their rank, aim is often not the issue. After all, aim doesn't make the player, their decisions do. If you constantly make bad decisions with great aim, you'll still be considered a bad player. You'll just get away with it more often, making yourself think your decisions were good. But when you come across better players, they start to punish you a lot heavier for your mistakes. You start to think that the play isn't bad, just your aim was. So you practice your aim again. Then you get stuck in an infinite loop of practicing your aim more, getting away with more bad decisions, ranking up again until you come against more mechanically skilled players. They'll shut you down yet again, and you have to start the process over. In my rank, I can definitely say that I'm by far not the most mechanically skilled player out there, but I also notice that my decision making is a lot better. By blaming your decisions instead of your aim, you force yourself to make better decisions more often and to take favorable angles only, which is something you want to start doing as soon as possible. Something else that I didn't figure out until recently is that silent jumps aren't really silent. You may or may not have heard it, but in CSGO, if you jump onto a higher surface or if you crouch jump and release crouch midair, you do this thing that the community calls a silent jump. When you jump normally, you make a loud sound cue when you land, and when you jump like this, that doesn't happen. That being said though, it isn't silent. Even the silent jumps make a sound. So if you're in a clutch situation, make sure you're aware of this because otherwise you might just give up your position without realizing. Similarly, a common misbelief in the community is that shotguns are really bad. And to be honest, I can understand where they're coming from. Shotguns like the Nova and Sawed-Off are pretty atrocious. But if you try to look further and try using other shotguns like the Mag 7 or especially the XM1014, you can figure out that they're pretty damn viable. I personally use the Mag 7 quite a lot and I'd highly recommend that you pick up the weapon too. And yet another thing that a lot of people do wrong is that they overrate learning lineups. Grenade lineups are great, don't get me wrong, and a lot of times they can be round winning. But what's much more important is knowing how to throw a grenade, a bit like learning how to spray a gun. All the grenades in the game have the same set trajectory, so if you put in the time, it'll be quite easy to learn how to throw grenades in a more general sense. This is useful because a lot of the time it isn't about how precise the grenade you throw is, but rather about the speed that it's out. If your teammate is in rapid need of support and doesn't really care if the flash you throw is a perfect pop flash, then it's much better that you immediately throw something on the fly than it is to line up your flash for a minute. It's not very often that I find myself or other players in the higher ranks of the game lining up utility unless it's for a set play or execute. So what else is there? Well, something I also see a lot of people doing wrong is going up ladders. And although it might seem easy enough, there's actually a bit of science to it. When going up ladders, it's actually best that you go up sideways, holding both your forward and a sideways strafe key. You may not see it right away, but this actually is quite substantial difference in what speed you go up the ladder. And if someone in front of you does it the wrong way, they'll slow down the entire team behind them. So it's important to get this right. And from the beginning of the video, something else that not a lot of people know of is that you can fake a reload in order to get easy kills. We all know that pushing someone as they start reloading is a pretty easy way to get a kill. So if your opponents are the type of people that are fast enough to respond to that, you can take advantage of it by faking a reload instead. All you have to do is simply fire a few bullets, press your reload button, and then quick switch twice and fire again at the enemy that came rushing around the corner. It's not always easy, but pulling it off will be damn satisfying, so we highly recommend you try this out in your games. And for today's last thing, we have stats are not important. In the CSGO community, judging people by their stats is very common and actually has become pretty standard. The thing about stats though is that they're pretty meaningless. In a matchmaking scenario, it's really easy to get a positive KD all the time. What's less easy is winning rounds, and no, the two don't necessarily go hand in hand. You win rounds by taking map control, either getting a pick or by using your utility, and then hopefully splitting or at least having the option of splitting onto a bomb site. Since you're not really a team though, and you're playing matchmaking, it's most likely going to be getting a pick and not by tactically using your utility together as a team to slowly and methodically get more and more control. The thing about the scoreboard though is that a single round winning entry frag matters equally to an exit frag when you're saving. A player that goes in first gets a pick and then gets traded ultimately wins you the round and has a kill death ratio of 1-to-1. But someone that decides it's game time and kills 3 people attempting to hunt him has a KD of 3-to-0, even though those 3 exit frags do not matter in the bigger picture. Basically, stats are pretty meaningless unless you don't care about them and play to win.
Well guys, I hope you guys learned something from this video, and if you guys did like it, definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and go hit that bell notification button for future video notifications. If you guys also want more help, go check out ProGuides.com, where we have a vast array of courses and also coaching to help you with your specific needs. With that being said, my name is Straight, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.